In this video, we're going to walk through the weighted average shares outstanding for Newton Inc. We're told that Newton uses a calendar year for financial reporting and at no time had any potentially dilutive securities outstanding. Newton had 9 million shares of authorized $10 par value common stock. At the end of December 31st, 2018, Newton had 2 million shares outstanding, which means, of course, we've got 2 million shares outstanding at the beginning of 2019. The first stock transaction that took place in 2019 was a 10% stock dividend on September 30th, 2019, which means our shares will increase to 2.2 million shares. Now, we assume that the effect of all stock dividends or stock splits occurs at the beginning of the year. And that's because stock dividends and stock splits don't change total assets and don't change total equity. And if we have no change in total assets, the assumption is we won't have any impact on future earnings. So we'll assume that the stock transaction took place at the beginning of the year. On the other hand, if we issue new shares or repurchase shares, our assets and equity will change. And if we have a change in assets and equity, the assumption is that earnings from that point forward will change. So again, since we have a stock dividend or stock split, we assume it happens at the beginning of the year, and this happened at September 30th, so those shares will assume to have been outstanding for 9/12 of the year. So to calculate our weighted average shares outstanding, we take the 2 million initial shares, multiply it by 1.1 for the effect of the stock dividend, and then multiply it by 9/12 months for the months January through September. The 2.2 million shares outstanding after the split will be outstanding for 3 months, October through December, and we'll multiply that by the 2.2 million and get 550,000 for our weighted average shares. For the year then, our total weighted average shares is the sum of this 1.65 million and the 550,000, or 2.2 million shares. Now in this case, we could have calculated that 2.2 million by simply taking the shares at the beginning of the year and multiplying it by the impact of the stock dividend or stock split. That's because we didn't have any subsequent transactions in terms of share repurchases or new share issues. I encourage you to go through the step of splitting these into fractions of the year, just in case we do have new share issues or repurchases in subsequent problems or subsequent years in this problem. All right, we begin January 1, 2020 with 2.2 million shares outstanding. Our first stock transaction is issuing 1 million shares on March 31st. So as of March 31st, we'll have 3.2 million shares outstanding. The initial shares, the 2.2 million shares, were outstanding for 3 months, January through March. So we multiply the 2.2 by 3/12 to get a weighted average shares of 550,000 for the first 3 months of the year. The 3.2 million shares were outstanding for 9 months, from the months of April through December. We take 3.2 million, multiply it by the fraction 9/12, and get 2.4 million weighted average shares. For the year then, we have 2.95000, or 2,950,000 weighted average shares outstanding. We begin January 1, 2021 with the 3.2 million shares outstanding. Our first stock transaction is a 2-for-1 stock split on June 30th, which will increase our shares outstanding to 6.4 million. Now again, that 2-for-1 stock split is assumed to have happened at the beginning of the year, and it was outstanding for 6 months, January through June. So we take the 3.2 million shares, multiply it by 2, multiply it by the fraction of the year, and get 3.2 million weighted average shares for the first 6 months of the year. The next stock transaction takes place on November 30th, when we repurchase 200,000 shares, reducing our total shares outstanding to 6.2 million. That means the 6.4 million shares were outstanding for 5 months of the year. That's July through November. So we take the 6.4 million, multiply it by 5/12, and get 2,666,667 shares. The 6.2 million shares after our repurchase were outstanding just for the month of December, so we'll multiply that by 1/12 and have a weighted average shares for the final month of the year of 516,667 shares. Adding the three together, we get a total weighted average shares outstanding for the year of 6,383,333 shares.